Well, the U.S. Senate began impeachment proceedings today against the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I do not expect it to last very long. Senate leader Chuck Schumer has already called for a vote to dismiss at least the first impeachment article, calling it unconstitutional, and has denounced the entire process, calling it nakedly partisan. You know, like impeaching a president after he's left office, but don't let that bother you. 67 votes are needed to convict Mayorkas of, quote, willfully and systematically refusing to comply with federal immigration laws, which he's done, making false statements to Congress about the border being secure, which he's done. We've all witnessed this. But Democrats hold a 51-seat majority in the Senate. They're not expected to oust the cabinet member at all. Joining me live now to discuss this, Montana Congressman Matt Rosendale. Matt, good to have you here.
Steve, always good to be with you.
You know, I can sit here and say, yep, he did that. Yep, I mean, how many times does Mayorkas get to sit there and lie to Ted Cruz or lie to people on your side of the Capitol building? I mean, he's done it repeatedly. We've seen the numbers. The numbers have gone from 300,000 or 400,000 a year to millions per year, up 4 to 8 times. Millions of people float in unchecked, unvetted, and then unleashed on America. Matt, you know it. We all know it. And they're not going to hold him accountable one bit, are they?
They are not. I just left the Senate side. I marched over there with my dear friend Andy Biggs and Clay Higgins from Louisiana, and we were watching the proceedings as they began. And Chuck Schumer laid out the process with which they were going to conduct this impeachment in the Senate and made it exceedingly clear that he was going to make his motion to dismiss the charges in the first count and the second count, that they laid out how much debate that they were going to allow. It was like watching some kind of a comedy of a Western. We're going to give him a fair trial, and then we're going to take him out back and we're going to hang him. We're going to find him guilty, and then we're going to take him out back and hang him, except it's the opposite way. He basically said, we're going to give him a fair trial, and then we're going to go ahead and dismiss all these charges and declare him not guilty. The American people know that Alejandro Mayorkas has compromised our national security. The American people know that he has allowed 10 million people to come into our country, at least illegally. And they know that a lot of those people are wishing to do us harm, and they are going to hold the Democrat Party accountable for that. How long will this go on? How long will they allow him to stay in his job and conduct this kind of activity? As long as there's 51 Democrats in the United States Senate, because the House did their job. We sent over the impeachment. We brought the information forward. We made the case.
And the case is solid. Again, we've all sat here and watched. We've all sat here and watched as Alejandro Mayorkas has lied and lied and lied, not answered questions, filibustered on answers in front of the Senate and the House. Doesn't matter. He's doing this by design. Matt, this is by design. And in Montana, you think you're a long way from the southern border. But those drugs are showing up in Montana in record numbers now. The fentanyl, the heroin, all of it. I've seen numerous stories, and you know what I'm talking about.
They are. I speak with my state's attorney general, Austin Knudsen, regularly. We have a 1,200 to 1,300% increase in fentanyl deaths, in fentanyl seizures. They have taken advantage, the cartels have, of the Indian reservations across the state. They go in because we don't have the proper cooperative agreements between federal law enforcement and the state law enforcement and the tribal law enforcement. And so they've been able to go into these areas and set up operations. And then from there, they filter these drugs out. And there's hundreds of people, lives being lost every single year in Montana alone. If this conduct was taking place from any place else, we would basically be declaring war. We're losing about 100,000 people a year lives due to fentanyl. And Steve, that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface.
And I've said this before, Matt. That is an act of war, and it's not just an act of war by Mexico and the cartels. It's an act of war by China, where the components of fentanyl are created before they're shipped to Mexico to be combined into a compound that comes over our borders and kills 125,000 Americans. Mexico and China are complicit in this and allowing it to happen, as is Alejandro Mayorkas and this administration. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And the thing is, we know how to stop this from taking place. It's not theoretical. We know the policies that the Trump administration put in place. It does not take any additional act of Congress to make them permanent. It would, but the additional provisions to make sure that ICE is doing their job and deporting the illegals when they get here, to make sure that we have the asylum status reevaluated so that people just cannot use it to get into our country, to make sure that they have the Remain in Mexico policy put in place if they claim asylum, that they're waiting in Mexico until they have that hearing adjudicated. That in and of itself eliminates about 75% of the illegals that they have released into our country. These are policies that Alejandro Mayorkas is very familiar with and knows that it would stem the flow of illegals into our country, and he's ignoring it intentionally because they want this to happen.
Let me ask you one other totally new subject just for a moment here, Matt. You, for anybody who doesn't know, you've decided not to run for re-election in November, so you're stepping aside. You said there's a whole herd of Republicans trying to get your seat. We'll see how that plays out, but here's my question for you. I'm reading a brand new opinion column here that says Marjorie Taylor Greene should be focused on going after Democrats and not fighting her own party every single day. She's called for Mike Johnson to be removed as the speaker. Where does that do anybody any good? And do you agree with that? MTG, what do you make of it in this latest, question of competence for the Speaker of the House?
Here's the problem. If you look across all of the votes that we have taken, Steve, and you see that there's somewhere between 70 and 90 Republicans that vote against the spending. There's somewhere between 70 and 90 Republicans that vote against these large omnibus bills. There's at least 200. I was really glad to see the numbers that we had vote last week to say, you know something, before the federal government can conduct surveillance on American citizens, they have to get a warrant. Go figure. Until we can to make sure that we have not just a majority of Republicans in the United States Congress, but a majority of Republicans that are willing to uphold their oath of office and defend the Constitution, to make sure that we're not spending more than we collect, to make sure that we're protecting the citizens' rights, we're going to continue to have these problems. As I told you, I managed my expectations when I came here as serving in the minority. But when we claim the majority, maybe our agenda won't pass, but we daggone sure should be putting it forward and presenting it to the Senate and to the White House for their consideration, so the American people see what we stand for.
But should Mike Johnson stay or go? That's the question.
What are you going to replace him with?
That's my question. I don't know if you do any better. I think it creates chaos, and that was the point of some conservatives saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is to focus on going after Biden and his administration, not the infighting. Sir, I'll leave it right there for today. Matt, always a good time talking to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Steve. You have a great afternoon.